Hello, and welcome to another episode of Glorious Life on Wheels. Over the years, I have interviewed, I can't even count how many nomads living in a variety of vehicles, and many of them have been seniors. Some of them have been living that lifestyle out of choice, others out of financial necessity. Most of the individuals who I've interviewed enjoy the lifestyle and have adapted well. So we tend to focus in those videos on some of the positive features, such as less expensive and freedom to go and come as you please. But there are other aspects of van life that can be extremely challenging, and I would go so far as to say even deadly, especially to seniors. And in this video, I'm going to address some of those areas. In my title, I said 5 areas, but there are actually 2 more that as I was taping this, I thought of. So stay till the very, very end to hear those 2 also. In the interest of full disclosure, for those of you who may be new to my channel, I don't live full-time in my van. I have, however, over the past decade, traveled approximately 150,000 miles sleeping in my van as I travel. So I have a pretty good idea about some of the challenges that I'm going to be discussing in this video. I'm going to refer to my notes so I can stay on track. And these items that I'm going to be discussing are not in any particular order of priority or importance. But the first thing I want to talk about as far as a challenge or something that can be deadly in van life is the lack of the ability for some people, to get a good night's sleep. They don't have a proper bed. Now, there can be many reasons for that. They could be in a vehicle that doesn't have the space once they put all their other possessions in there and try and smash everything together. Or perhaps they had to move suddenly into their vehicle and they didn't have the financial means to buy a proper mattress or something that would provide them with a good night's sleep. I recently interviewed someone named Sheila, 78 years old, living in her SUV, and she'd lived in that SUV for 2 years without a proper bed. She had just pushed the back seats of her SUV down, and she was sleeping on top of those back seats in a sleeping bag. And she had shared with me how she was experiencing back problems and her back was hurting her, as you would expect for a 78-year-old person sleeping like that. You're probably asking, well, what is so important about, a good night's sleep that it can actually be fatal? Well, I did some research and I'm going to share with you what I found. Number 1 is the chronic lack of quality of sleep for seniors actually leads to having a higher risk for strokes and heart attacks. Who knew? But yes, not getting a good night's sleep, especially for seniors, increases their risk for heart attacks and strokes. Another thing, it weakens the immune system, which makes them more susceptible to infections, because with the body's lowered immune system, it also lowers the ability to fight off infections. So if you're somewhere and someone has a virus or a cold or something, you're at a much higher risk for not being able to fight it off and getting it. A third thing is, I thought this was interesting, it increases the risk for falling. I guess if you're more tired, you're less careful or less alert, so you're at higher risk for falling. Now, this is something I was surprised to read, but it also increases the risk for type 2 diabetes and obesity. Who knew? But yes, that's what I read based on studies. Another thing is a lack of proper sleep increases the risk of earlier onset of dementia by 33%. 33%. And additionally, It increases mood disorders, especially for depression and anxiety. The second hardship about van life that can really wreak havoc on seniors in particular is the challenge of trying to find a place to park and sleep in your van or vehicle safely at night. Fewer and fewer places are allowing people to sleep overnight. Many municipalities have enacted laws that make it illegal to sleep in your vehicle, and many cities have posted signs now where you can no longer park even overnight in certain areas between the hours of 10 at night and 6 in the morning. As someone who has traveled extensively and often drives for hundreds of miles in a single day, I can tell you it is exhausting to pull over and need to get a good night's sleep and not be able to find somewhere to park safely. You go looking and have to end up getting back on the freeway, drive to the next exit, and then look. And then when you do find a place, you're concerned that you may get that knock in the middle of the night, so you don't get a good night's sleep. You're exhausted, and then you experience some of the things that I talked about in the first area that I covered in this video. So yeah, that is a problem that people need to be aware of before getting involved in van life or becoming a nomad. The third thing that a lot of people think, well, this is no big deal, but it could be, and that is not having a power source. And you're saying, well, what's the big deal about having a power source? Well, if you don't have a power source, you can't have refrigeration. And yes, I know a lot of people live in vehicles and they don't have a refrigerator, but let me just explain why that can be a problem. If you don't have a refrigerator, you have to rely on shelf-stable foods. And many of the shelf-stable foods are canned foods. And many people who don't have refrigerators use canned foods, which typically are very high in sodium, which can add to high blood pressure and other problems. Another thing that results from not having a refrigerator is that many of the nomads that I know will end up stopping by a fast food place to pick up something. And that's really unhealthy, high in calories, low in nutrition, and adds to health problems. Also, it can really be a budget buster if you're going out buying food every day because you don't have a refrigerator to keep fresh fruits and vegetables and things in. Another way being a nomad, particularly if you're in a vehicle like a minivan or a car or an SUV where you can't stand up and you have to constantly be in a seated position, maybe bending over or crouching over or, slumping over in order to do everything, it can really impact you. Some of the things it can cause, it puts pressure on your spine and joints, causing chronic pain. It also weakens your core muscles. It can reduce mobility, having to be in that crouched position a good number of hours of the day. And listen to this. It increases, or by increasing pressure on your abdomen, it can lead to incontinence. Who knew? I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. Go look it up yourself. But these are some things that being in a crouched over position, having to always be leaning over, it can impact your skeletal system and have some really negative impacts on your health if you're in that kind of vehicle. So this is information that may impact your decision as to what kind of vehicle you choose if you have that option. The fifth thing is not having an emergency fund. And you're probably asking, how in the heck does not having an emergency fund, or how can that impact your health or your well-being? Well, let me connect the dots for you. Many people who move into a vehicle don't have an emergency fund. But many of those people also, out of necessity, are in an older vehicle or van. So there's a much higher likelihood that something is going to go wrong mechanically. When that happens, that's their home. And if you've ever gone in to have major work done on a vehicle, you know that it's usually not done the same day. So let's say they have to order parts, or your vehicle has to be somewhere for 3 or 4 days or even a couple of weeks. Where are you going to live? You may have to completely burn your budget or max out your credit cards that you already were going to have to add a lot to for the repairs, but then you have to max them out for somewhere to stay because your home is now in some mechanic's garage and you need shelter. So you're going to have to spend the money to stay at a hotel or a Airbnb or something else. And that can add tremendous stress on a person. And we all know that stress can take you out. So this is another way that being a nomad as a senior can be very stressful and ultimately possibly even deadly. Now for the last two things that I told you that I would share with you. And I don't know how I forgot about these because they're really critical, perhaps the most critical. And the first of those is climate control. It truly, truly can be deadly to be in a vehicle in extreme weathers. Heat of, I'd say even over 80 degrees in a vehicle can be dangerous. It can get up to 140 degrees or higher in a vehicle. I have been in Las Vegas at night when it was in the 90s. Can you imagine what it would be like in the daytime in a vehicle in Las Vegas or the desert of Arizona or Palm Springs or somewhere like that where it gets to 122 degrees? I've been in Palm Springs when it's 122 degrees, and even outside a vehicle it is roasting. Can you imagine what it's like inside a vehicle? So during those kind of temperature and weather conditions, you need alternatives because again, it can be deadly. I would rather deal with cold weather than the risk of a heat stroke or even heat exhaustion. But cold weather, extreme cold weather, can be very, very dangerous also, hypothermia and other things. So that is one of the things that people don't always think about when they become nomads, how to deal with extreme weather conditions. The other thing is vehicle maintenance. And you ask, well, how can this be deadly? Well, there was a gentleman, sadly, in Quartzsite this season. I forget his name, but he was apparently a really nice gentleman, older gentleman, him and his dog. And he had a problem with the propane tank going up, and it engulfed his vehicle or his RV and his vehicle in flames, and he and his dog perished. So if you are a nomad moving into a vehicle because you can't afford rent and you have limited funds and you have an older vehicle, I mean, this is like the perfect storm, you may not have the money to properly check out or fix some things in your vehicle that could be really, really dangerous, like propane or other things that could catch fire. Or if you do have solar and you don't have your panels or something hooked up right, and you don't have the money to get it checked out, very, very dangerous. I'm not trying to scare anyone out of becoming a nomad. I just felt that in that I did so many vehicles or have done so many vehicles, sharing all the positive sides and the happy sides of nomad living, I felt a duty to also share some of the things that could actually be dangerous and things you need to be aware of and mindful of before becoming a nomad or moving into a vehicle. I hope this has been helpful for some. Let me know in the comments if it has. And if you have any other things that you can share, let me know that in the comment too. All right. Love each and every one of you. And stay tuned. I hope to see you on my live this Saturday at 3 p.m. Pacific and 6 p.m. Eastern. Take care. Bye till next time.